All right, so welcome back to the Drive to Succeed podcast. We have the one and only Bethany Hughes on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Such a delight. Pleasure to be here.
Perfect. And it's the first time meeting here, and we're here in Emirates Airline Festival of Literature. You've done a couple of books which are best-selling, and you're also a celebrity, which covers a lot of documentaries, films, classical history, which is, to be honest, me myself just recently stumbled. Oh, so she's the lady behind the voice and the documentary, because I'm from the Philippines, so I
Okay.
only saw you from afar, and then got
Oh,
to meet you here personally. It's really an honor.
pleasure. Well, I said it's really great. It's nice to. It's really that's what's great about these kinds of things that they bring random people together from across the world, which has to be a good thing.
Yeah, so for our first time listeners or audience who still doesn't know you, who is Bethany Hughes?
So I'm a historian and a broadcaster. So divide my life basically into three. I'm like an old-fashioned Benedictine nun. So a third of the time I'm writing books, a third of the time I'm doing academic research, and a third of the time I'm making television programs and radio programs and podcasts about history. It's a really interesting thing for me this because when I was starting out, it was really unfashionable history.
Yeah.
Everybody said like, why are you doing this? It's so dull. It's the study of dead languages and dead people, and
Yeah.
you'll end up in a dead end job and like give over. Just can't, don't bother. And it was definitely partly actually that negativity that made me even more determined to do it because I'm talking about the 1990s and
Yeah.
really interesting. There was a sort of notion, I think, that the year 2000 was coming and there's going to be a massive like reset
Yeah.
button that's pushed on the world and
This
all
is pre-internet era.
pretty much pre-internet, and there was this feeling that all the answers would then lie in the future and that the past would be redundant and like
Yeah.
2000 would be this line in sand in
Yeah.
human experience, and life just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, yeah.
We do things because that they're a good or a bad idea, and that they can be a good or a bad idea stretching back thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very unusual to just kind of jettison all of that. But it was it was a time when, as I said, people weren't supportive or encouraging at all. And one thing I really noticed was that there were no women presenting authored history programs, or really kind of
Yes.
you had
kind
female.
of kind of deep and
Exactly, you had like female newscasters, loads of female actors, but not that many
outgoing.
kind of sharing
Okay,
stuff,
yeah.
sharing knowledge. So I really, really actively wanted to try to change that. And I remember the first an interview I had with a TV producer saying, "Oh, it'd be great to tell these stories about, universal stories of the world, and to have, write women back into history and all of this." And there was that terrible moment, when you're talking to somebody and you realise you're doing all of the talking and there's just silence there, and this kind of negative wind coming over from them,
Yeah.
tumbleweed blowing through the office. And I remember him saying, let me tell you three things. One, nobody's interested in history. Two, nobody watches history programs on
Yeah.
television. And three, nobody wants to be lectured by a woman.
Yeah. And why still go history?
Yeah, well, exactly. And so that kind of put a real fire in my belly. I thought, well, you're just wrong, and I'm
Yeah.
going to prove
Prove
you
you
wrong.
wrong.
So it was definitely, it really helped me having that challenge, that sort of obstacle, because I knew I had to work really hard to get over it.
Awesome. And I just really understand, what's your background? You started broadcasting, or do you have a previous,
So I've always researched history, always kind of written and researched it, and just as I said, I was going to these incredible places. So I travel. I can't write history unless I go to the places where it happens.
I see. Yeah.
I'm very lucky. So I'm just talking to you now, but I've just come from a tiny little Greek island in the middle of the Aegean Sea, to Athens, to Jaipur in northern India, to Colombia in South
Yeah.
America. Back to London, and then here to the Gulf, because I think you have to live in a place for a bit to understand it. It's the experience through time. I think it's you can't just do it in a dry way.
Yeah.
From notes on a page. You have
Understand.
to kind of
Relive it.
smell it, feel the heat.
Yes.
Really exactly. So anyway, I've kind of travel a lot to do that, and I think it really for me, it means that you can be much more democratic in the history that you share, because you're really sharing history from the ground, from the bottom up.
Understood. And also, where did your love of history came from? I know your father was a theater
Yes.
actor.
Yeah.
Does it always come to you when you saw your dad acting?
Yeah.
Does facing in front of the camera comes with the family?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think, yeah, my dad was an actor, my mum was an actor as well. But as you know, actors are out of work most of the time, kind of. So we didn't have much money, and we used to just sit around the kitchen table in London, drinking lots of cups of tea and talking and sharing stories. So I think probably my real fascination with the stories of humans and people and how they react together actually came from those conversations. And you're right, probably the fact that my dad was an actor means it didn't seem weird for me to go in front of the camera and to do films. It felt like that was quite it's almost that was a thing that had validity, and I respected it. Whereas some people in the academic world thought, that's so fluffy and you're dumbing down. And I knew it was the opposite. I knew it's quite hard to communicate, visually as a person on stage or in film. So so you're right. It's probably that made me feel that was possible. That was an okay thing to do.
Yes, and also one of your inspiration, you always love history about Helen of Troy.
Yes.
Iliad by Homer.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the story behind that? Why pursue that story?
Okay, well that's interesting. So it's this story of the Trojan War and this great love affair that goes wrong. Helen runs off with Paris. The Prince of Troy, Menelaus, her husband. Gets all the heroes of Greece to fight to get her back. It's a siege that lasts 10 years, and then the heroes take 10 years to get home. So it's a really epic story, and it has a lot of fundamental, universal themes in it about the conflict of duty and desire, how we should balance those, aggression and compassion, how we should balance those, men and women, how we should live together. So I love those stories because they deal with the big questions of life, but also they come from an age, the Bronze Age, say 3,500 years ago, when in many places in the world, civilization as we know it was really beginning to form. So people were living together in citadels or cities, and kind of it's almost like it's the sort of blueprint for human life together. So I love diving into that historically because you learn so much about what matters to us. So yes, I've been. You should actually. I'll share this with you. So I've written these books, and I'm just making a film series about the story of the Trojan War and Odysseus.
Is this new? Is this coming out?
It's coming out. So this is like a scoop for you. So it's actually brand new. So I've just been filming it now in the Aegean. We're doing it by boat. We're following Odysseus's journey across the Aegean, and I'm slightly dazed because we were talking about Odysseus getting shipwrecked. So we went to a part of the Mediterranean where there are lots of ancient shipwrecks. And we nearly got shipwrecked. So, so I've lost my clothes and my phone, and but anyway, I've lived to tell the tale, so it's all okay.
Do you always love adventure? Because I know you've been doing it for quite a while now. How long has it been? 2 decades, 3 decades?
Yeah, 2.5 decades. Yeah.
2.5 decades. Because I feel like when I saw your old video, it feels like it's just yesterday. I mean, the voice, the energy.
Oh, yeah. I know. Because I'm kind of like middle-aged lady now. I do suddenly think, what am I doing as I'm running up a mountain or sort of walking across the roof of a temple? But I love it. I love that direct experience with the past and with culture. But yes, 2.5 decades, amazing. But it was hard when I started. So I was the first female historian ever to
classical historian.
Present history, a history television program on British television. And that's really late in the year 2000. If you think about it, it should have happened years before that. So it was quite a fight to get there, but I've loved it post the fight.
Because there's a difference between the US, it's like fireworks when they show on TV, but in British it's a little bit reserved.
No, that's interesting that's a difference. Yeah, we certainly Yeah, we certainly like subtlety in our
Yeah.
programs. You know, if there's a mystery, we say it's a mystery. We don't
Mm-hmm.
have to solve that mystery. We don't have to pretend that we
Yeah.
know what happened at the end. So, but you know, I'm very fortunate, and you know, we know kind of 200 million people a year watch the program.
Mm-hmm.
So we're a very clever you know, we can
Yeah.
deal with that kind
Yes,
of
yes.
level of documentary, I think.
And I'm really curious as well. I don't know if it's okay. We have kids,
Yes.
and do they watch your TV show? What do they say about?
Yeah, well, they've got two daughters, so basically they just think it's really embarrassing that I'm on telly, and you know they do that. Actually, a mixture. They're proud and embarrassed, and they do that thing of going like, "Oh, Mum, you know, you're doing that funny thing with your mouth again," or you know, whatever it is. But no, they've been very lucky. We really love each other, and they've come with me on quite a few of the adventures. So that's been amazing for them. But I'm always very aware. There's a beautiful Greek word, which is actually the origins of the English word fame, and the Greek word is pheme,
Pheme.
the ancient Greek. And what it means in ancient Greek originally is, it's not a good thing. It's rumour and gossip and slander. So I'm always very aware that fame has this dark side, and that if you become a public face, you shouldn't seek fame for its own sake. Because like the Greeks would say, then you're seeking slander and gossip and rumour. So I'm very aware. So I've always been very private with my family, and I'm you know, I don't try and I don't milk the fame
Yes,
thing
exactly.
at all. No.
It's actually you brought that up because once I was doing my research, there was a little bit, or there was really quite a few things that I could learn about you. Most of the things are more shows on TV or you know on YouTube, but in the personal, you know, stuff, I cannot see anything out of it. You know?
Yeah, that's interesting. No, that's what you're saying. You couldn't know.
Yeah, I couldn't. I couldn't see.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's right. So I don't. Yeah, I think it's. You know, I'm here to tell stories of history and cultures and civilizations. I'm not here to talk about myself,
exactly.
basically. So I don't ever. Yeah, I don't ever do.
Because
do
nowadays, especially in this today's age, digital age, most of the people want to capitalize their visibility on TV, online, so to gain more, you know, audiences and probably monetize the relationships and all that.
Yes. Yeah, well, I haven't got there yet. Maybe when I run out of money and I can't pay for my cup of tea, maybe I'll realise I need to monetize it. But, you know, no. I mean, I totally love what I do. It's the wealth for me is in the knowledge and the learning and the experience. And, you know, and I make a living from it. But yes, I think... Yeah, you just have to be very careful about exploiting. I think there's always room for your person to, you know, to have some privacy as well. And it shouldn't be, as I said, the stuff I share is about ideas for all of us. It's not about me sharing thoughts. It's finding kind of shared universal ideas that are going to interest everybody.
And one thing I really love about your work is that because you started early, 2 decades, so most of the audience that you begin with, you know, followed your journey until now, and they were like, "Oh, Bethany is doing another show."
Oh, that's great. I didn't really know that. So, well, I mean, I certainly feel very when I travel to film. I'm in the most random places. So some kind of, you know, temple in the high hills of India, or a shrine in rural China, or Tbilisi airport in Georgia. And it is really lovely for me, the people who come up and say they've seen the shows, and that it's helped them realise they are interested in history. And that is absolutely music to my ears, because it should be for everybody. It shouldn't just be for an intellectual elite or people who are university educated, or, you know, history is the story of life. It's the story of how people deal with the world.
Yeah,
so
and there's lessons in history that people can, you know.
Totally, like absolutely everybody should have access to those lessons.
And speaking of stories, there's one book, I think it was an old one. about Istanbul in Turkey.
yes.
It's a beautiful city. Me and my wife spent our wedding anniversary last year.
Beautiful.
So, but I'm really curious about what is your thoughts about Istanbul, Turkey,
Yeah.
and the book that you wrote about it. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, so this was the book came out a couple of years ago. I spent 10 years writing it. I love Istanbul. I went there when I was 18. I kind of fell in love with it. I really understood it as the centre of a crossroads, east and west, but not just east and west, north and south, and where so many different cultures have not just survived but thrived. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful city that can teach us a lot about how we can live together as a species, because it's the oldest city in Europe.
Yeah.
It's got a history that stretches back at least 9,000 years.
Yes.
So we find these amazing early remains there.
Wow.
And it's a city where unexpected people have managed to make a success of things. So a lot of women have made successful careers for themselves there, going right the way through ancient, medieval, early modern history. So I think it's a very dynamic city because it's surrounded by water. It has its own sense of itself as a character.
There's part Asia, part Europe.
Part Asia, part Europe, and it's sort of you have to go there with energy.
Yeah.
You can't just kind of go in on a dusty road. You've got to go by boat and get across bridges. So it's a very invigorating city. I really, really love it.
Yes. And in your years of broadcasting, what can you say are the top 3 lessons that you can share our audience today who wanted to maybe start a new adventure, make money out of it?
Okay, so I would definitely say we are made by the people around us. So both the delight of sharing ideas, but surround yourself with a good team, because we are only made better by the inspiration of others, and I so have a sense of yourself, but never do it at the cost of the people around you, because actually it's bad for them and it's bad for you. So I think that's absolutely, I've absolutely learned that. Listen is hugely important. So what I spend my time doing is listening to other people telling me their stories, and you learn about them, you learn about yourself, but it gives you a space to just to think. Somebody once told me, I'm sure loads of people know this, but in a kind of business meeting, you should always let the other person do at least 60% of the talking, because then they're kind of revealing their hand. They feel flattered that you're listening to them, but you're quietly sussing out the situation. So I think so love those around you, listen, and I think just really take a moment and think we only have one life on earth. I don't believe in reincarnation. I know some people do, but I think or at least we have one life. So let's make the most of that life. We on average as humans we live around 800 months. So really use those months to do things which benefit you, but which benefit the wider world too. And it's totally possible to do both, to have a wonderful, fulfilling life, and to nourish the world you live in.
And I'm just really curious as well, what is the one thing or worst failure you encountered in your career, even recently, or maybe in your early days?
Worse. Well, I think that was a big one, being told I shouldn't bother with history. I shouldn't bother with history programs. Nobody wants to listen to a woman. I really remember that. I remember that terrible feeling of literally your heart sinking to your stomach, your mouth going dry. You just know that you're unwanted in that room. And really think, wow, well, is this it? These ideas and dreams that I have, really, is it just going to be impossible? So that's definitely stayed with me. But as I said, there's no doubt that I came out of that room and just thought, right, you are not going to win. I'm going to prove you wrong. So I think that, and there are 100 little problems every day, but you just learn from them. A friend of mine said, never miss the opportunity of a challenge or a crisis, and that's really, really good advice. So there's a crisis, and you just think, okay, how can I come out stronger from this? How can we make this work? So you like Nietzsche. I did a program, as you know, about Nietzsche, the philosopher, and it is Very true. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Make you stronger. And if you're not doing classical history, what could you be doing?
Oh, wow, that's a question. How interesting. Weirdly, what I'm probably best at, and I don't do it at all, is I used to draw and paint. That was probably weirdly
Yeah.
where my talent is. But it's almost like it's too exposing to kind of
Yeah.
make that my life. So maybe when I get a bit of time, in my declining years, when I can no longer climb the mountains,
Yes.
then I'll sit and paint them
And
instead.
perfect. Because I think the way you're using your talents now is painting history with your words, with your energy. It can, I believe that can be transcribed to that as well.
Beautiful. What a lovely thought. It's
Thank you.
fantastic.
Thank you. So, before my final question, where can people know more about your work?
Yeah. So
And you also have a new book.
I have a new book and I've got a new company making television programs. So you can find me. So I'm Bethany Hughes. So www.bettanyhughes.com. There's all the information about the stuff I do as a historian there. We've got a beautiful company that I founded with some huge talent, but we're making television programs, and that's www.sandstoneglobal.com.
Sandstone Global.
Sandstoneglobal.com. So we make these stories. So if you've got ideas, bring them to us, and if you think there's a bit of history or culture that we should be covering, we'd love to hear about it. So there, and then the books I've got out at the moment are a book about Venus and Aphrodite, the goddess, just looking at her as an idea and her history, and the big book on Istanbul that took me 10 years to write, and then some older ones about Helen and Socrates.
Yes.
But the Istanbul and Venus are the big ones.
Perfect. So before my final question, I just want to acknowledge you for stepping up and not listening to those negativity and just continuing pushing forward. There's a saying that the sweetest revenge is proving them wrong.
Yes, I'm quietly, not arrogantly, not with hubris, not with overpride, quietly enjoying that revenge.
Awesome.
Okay.
So my last and final question to you is, if everything is stripped away from you, your books, your films, your company, everything, and you got to start all over again, what would be your main drive to succeed?
What a fantastic question. So if everything had gone, I think it would be, my main drive to succeed would be to connect. And I say that, with real, I think we are not islands in this world. And what I see in the story of the world is the very best things happen when we have an idea and we share it with somebody, and that idea becomes bigger and better and more beautiful. So my drive to succeed would be to connect with those around me, and then just to see where that journey takes me.
Yes. Thank you so much, Bethany Hughes, for your time, and see you in the next episode.
Lovely to speak to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great.